The Japanese American Remembrance Trail was a rather large and comprehensive community collaboration that included the Wing Luke Museum, the National Park Service, Nisei Veterans Committee, Washington State Labor Council, and quite a few more. My name is Rahul Gupta. I am the Education and Tours Director at the Wing Luke Museum of the Asian Pacific American Experience. And the project that came about a number of years ago was entitled the Japanese American Remembrance Trail. As I am talking more generally about our project and the work of the youth artists from our Youth Can program, on the screen you'll see in this particular order a historic photograph of a particular location, the location today, and the artist's work. This project was about increasing people's health and well-being to get them to engage with their city, the city's history, while, taking the initiative to get out there and be physically active. In order to accomplish it, we would not only need to develop a map with routes and descriptions of places, we would also need to include digital engagement and multi-generational engagement. The committee agreed that to take the steps even deeper would be required, and that included guided interpretation provided by the museum, in particular the education staff. Three routes were created with various themes of spirituality, the arts, community, family, all with a generational lens. For those of us who teach the history, it is a reality that we are sadly losing our Nisei elders who can share their stories. Drawing on the oral histories in the Wing Luke Museum archive and documenting others through artifacts, personal archives, and memorabilia, and quite relevant to our Japanese American community members here, including the stories of veterans who served mostly in the 442nd during the war. From an educational perspective, it has been clear to me and my department that fewer and fewer students are being taught the complexity of the Second World War, let alone a deeper dive into the incarceration and its implications. Over the years, we've worked with educators and others to develop curriculum to implement in state classrooms, combined with field trips into the remaining core of Nihonmachi and within the museum itself. But the big question we have had is, how do you continue to push students to not only connect with the facts or a timeline of events, but develop the means to analyze or interpret the human impact of that era? One answer: art. Specifically, the art of youth. From many backgrounds, connecting with the oral histories, first-person stories, and understanding the symbology of those historic locations throughout the neighborhood and their connections to the memories people retain of the time before the war, their experiences during the war, and the hardship of returning home. In this way, we have found a natural segue to discussing the redress movement and the voices of dissent, to the incarceration itself and the questions of loyalty. Some very recognizable voices came from our community. Furthermore, we can challenge older students in their understanding of civil rights in the country and where and how and when Japanese Americans and other Asian Americans and their demands for social justice coincided with, blended with, and still in some ways remain distinct from the larger civil rights movement in our country. These particular youth artists joined the initial public tours offered by the museum. Having been able to watch them describe their art and make those connections for the guests was incredibly powerful. They were surrounded by local, predominantly Sansei, and some of their Gosei grandchildren, answering questions, asking questions, and doing what the museum does when we engage in teaching history. Bring everyone into a dialogue, interrupt that monotonous sound of our own voices. And in this moment, that entire committee and all the voices at that table also sat back and listened to the youth, because that was the moment to focus on the younger generation's interpretation of memory.